Welcome to your very own YouTube channel, Pro Billionaires. This is the place where we bring you the powerful success stories of individuals who once had nothing but managed to rise from the bottom to become self-made millionaires. Our content is centered around those who were once in challenging circumstances, starting with zero, and through hard work, perseverance, and the right mindset, transformed their lives into extraordinary success. By watching these incredible journeys, you'll not only find inspiration but also valuable insights on how to grow, thrive, and ultimately reach your goals. Whether you're looking for life-changing motivation or practical tips to help you make it big, these stories will show you exactly what it takes to become a millionaire. If you're ready to learn, grow, and embark on your own path to success, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on any of our motivating content. Join us on this exciting journey to success. He had no idea that one decision on a rainy afternoon would forever change the course of his life. The sky was gray and heavy as if the universe itself was bearing down on him. His name was Darren, and for years he had lived a life that many would call unfortunate. Raised in a forgotten part of the city where broken glass and broken dreams littered the streets, he had learned early on that no one was coming to rescue him. His father had disappeared before his third birthday, and his mother struggled with addiction, hopping between minimum-wage jobs and unstable relationships. By the time Darren turned 16, he was already accustomed to fending for himself, sleeping in cold basements and sometimes even under park benches. Food came from shelters or trash bins. He knew hunger like an old friend and disappointment like a shadow. Still, there was something about Darren that made him different. He had a mind that refused to accept the script life had handed him. While his friends spent their time plotting petty thefts or wasting away in alleyways, Darren carried a small notebook where he wrote his thoughts, dreams, and goals. Most would laugh if they saw the list. Start a business. Make $1 million. Travel the world. Give back to the community. He had no money, no connections, and no guidance, but he had those words, and somehow they gave him hope. One rainy day, soaked to the bone and starving, Darren took shelter in the back of a bookstore. It wasn't a fancy place. Dusty wooden shelves, books stacked carelessly, and a single overhead bulb that flickered like it was debating whether to stay on or off. He had only come in to stay dry. But something strange happened. He picked up a book that had been tossed on a corner table. It was about mindset. He didn't expect much, but once he started reading, he couldn't stop. The pages felt like someone was talking directly to him. It said things like, your environment does not define your destiny, and every failure is just a step closer to success. He read the entire book sitting on the floor. By the time he finished, the store owner approached him. An older man with tired eyes and a gentle voice. He didn't yell or call the police. He handed Darren a warm cup of tea and said, "You can come back anytime, son." From that day on, Darren became a regular. He read books on business psychology, self-discipline, and strategy. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge and slowly began applying what he learned. He took small jobs. Washing dishes, mopping floors, handing out flyers. He saved every penny. He opened a bank account. He watched videos in the library about e-commerce and affiliate marketing. He taught himself graphic design using free software. He failed repeatedly. First he tried selling handmade candles. Then t-shirts. Then digital art prints. Nothing worked. But he kept learning. Kept adjusting. Kept failing forward. One night, after weeks of trial and error, he built a simple website. He had discovered a niche market for customized motivational posters. It sounded ridiculous at first. But he knew from experience that people needed hope. He designed 3 templates. Uploaded them. Wrote simple ads on social media. And waited. The first week. Nothing. The second week. Still nothing. But on the 11th day he got his first sale. It was just $12. But he stared at his phone for a long time as if it had spoken a secret language only he understood. He danced alone in the room he rented behind a mechanic's shop. $12 felt like $1 million. Because it meant something was possible. Sales trickled in. One order every few days. Then one per day. Then 3. Darren reinvested every cent. He upgraded his website. Improved the designs. Started an email list. Within 6 months he had made his first $5,000. He couldn't believe it. He had never seen that much money at once. He used some of it to finally buy decent clothes. He bought his mom a warm coat for winter. She cried when he gave it to her. Things were still hard. But the momentum had begun. And Darren knew something else now. He had already achieved something most people never do. He had changed the story he was born into. Let me know when you're ready for the next part and I'll continue the story from there. Darren's journey had only just begun, but the sense of hope that had begun to flicker in his heart was now burning brighter than ever. The first few months of success, though modest, were enough to fuel his belief that the impossible could be turned into something tangible. He now had a taste of what it meant to fight for his dreams, and he wasn't about to let go. With the money from his first sales, Darren upgraded his living situation. He found a small apartment that was far from luxurious, but it was his. He could finally close the door and have a space to himself. He bought a second-hand computer and set up a tiny office in the corner of his room. The idea of working from home thrilled him. He remembered a time when he would have done anything to escape the streets, and now, it was becoming a reality. There were no more cold nights spent searching for warmth in a forgotten alleyway. This was his chance to build something bigger, something better. But success wasn't handed to him. The road to turning his dreams into reality was long and filled with obstacles. Darren was still learning the ropes of e-commerce, and each mistake felt like a punch in the stomach. There were days when the orders slowed to a trickle, and he began to doubt himself. Was this all just a fluke? Did he really have what it took to make it? One day, the weight of it all came crashing down. He had invested everything he had into expanding his business. He had spent his last dollar on a new marketing campaign, hoping it would bring in more customers. Instead, the campaign failed miserably. His website traffic plummeted, and his sales dwindled to almost nothing. For the first time in months, Darren felt the panic creeping in. He was back at square one, and the fear of failure gnawed at him relentlessly. But then he remembered what he had learned from the books and videos that had inspired him. Success wasn't about avoiding failure, it was about learning from it. He couldn't afford to give up now, not when he had come this far. He took a step back, reevaluated his approach, and dug deep into his network of online communities. He joined forums, listened to podcasts, and sought advice from successful entrepreneurs who had been where he was. It wasn't long before Darren found his next breakthrough. A mentor, someone who had built their own multi-million-dollar business from the ground up, reached out to him after reading one of Darren's posts on a forum. The mentor saw potential in Darren, recognized his drive, and offered to help. This was the turning point he had been waiting for. The mentor didn't hand Darren the answers on a silver platter. Instead, he challenged him to think differently, to experiment more boldly, and to push the boundaries of what he thought was possible. Darren learned about paid advertising, product differentiation, and customer retention strategies. He was introduced to the concept of scaling, taking his small idea and turning it into something much bigger. With the guidance of his mentor, Darren refined his marketing strategy and expanded his product line. He started offering custom designs for corporate clients and introduced a subscription model for motivational posters, which gave customers new designs every month. Slowly, but surely, the orders began to flood in once again. His confidence returned, and so did his passion for what he was building. Within a year, Darren's business had grown exponentially. He was now employing a small team of graphic designers and marketers who helped him manage the increasing demand. His living situation had drastically improved. He could finally afford to eat 3 meals a day without worrying about where his next meal would come from. But most importantly, he was giving back to his community, just as he had promised himself when he was still struggling. He began sponsoring local youth programs, offering mentorship to young people who reminded him of himself, kids who felt trapped by their circumstances, with no clear path to escape. Darren became a symbol of hope in the very neighborhood he once thought he would never escape. But success wasn't just about money or recognition. It was about the transformation Darren had undergone. He had gone from a homeless teenager with nothing but a notebook full of dreams to a successful entrepreneur who was now shaping the future of others. The impossible had indeed become possible, but it hadn't been easy. It had taken resilience, a willingness to learn, and the courage to push through the hardest times. Now, standing at the helm of a thriving business, Darren reflected on his journey. He had learned that the true measure of success wasn't how much money you made or how many people knew your name. It was about the lives you impacted, the people you lifted up, and the way you refused to give in when everything seemed lost. Darren had turned the impossible into possible, not just for himself, but for others too. And that, he realized, was the greatest success of all. Let me know when you're ready for the final part, and I'll continue the story. Darren's rise to success had been nothing short of extraordinary. From the depths of poverty and despair to the heights of entrepreneurship, he had transformed his life and the lives of others. But even as his business continued to grow, Darren remained grounded. He had learned early on that success was not just about the destination but about the journey. And the journey was far from over. It was now 2 years since Darren had launched his motivational poster business, and his company had blossomed into a thriving brand. His story had spread across social media, and soon, he found himself invited to speak at events and podcasts. He became a symbol of resilience, a living testament to the power of persistence and hard work. But despite the newfound fame and recognition, Darren had one goal in mind: to give back. His childhood had been filled with pain and struggle, but it had also taught him the importance of empathy. He knew what it was like to feel forgotten, to be left behind by society. And now, as a successful entrepreneur, he was in a unique position to change that. Darren wanted to create a foundation that would help underprivileged youth in the city get the same opportunities he had received, the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to build a better future for themselves. He poured his heart and soul into the foundation, calling it the Hope Project. Its mission was simple: to provide mentorship, education, and resources to kids who were struggling to make it out of difficult circumstances. He worked tirelessly to partner with local schools, community centers, and businesses. He raised funds through his own business profits, hosting charity events and auctions. His team was small but passionate, and together, they began to make a real impact. At first, it was small scale. Darren would visit schools, speak to groups of students, and share his story. He would tell them about the hardships he had faced and how, with determination and the right mindset, he had turned his life around. He saw the way their eyes lit up when he spoke. He knew they were listening. For many of them, Darren was the first person who had ever told them that they could be more than their circumstances. That they had the power to change their lives. But it wasn't just about talking to them. Darren made sure the foundation offered practical support. Scholarships, internships, free access to learning materials, and even small business grants were provided to those who showed potential and determination. The Hope Project gave young people the tools to succeed, but it also taught them the value of hard work, perseverance, and the importance of helping others once they made it. As Darren's foundation grew, so did his influence. He was approached by corporations, celebrities, and even politicians who admired the work he was doing and wanted to support it. They donated money, resources, and time, and together, they created a ripple effect that spread across the city and beyond. Darren's story had inspired countless others to take action, to be more than just passive observers of their own lives. But with all the success, Darren never lost sight of where he had come from. He often took time to visit the neighborhoods he grew up in, walking the same streets where he had once felt hopeless. He would speak with the kids who were still stuck in that cycle of poverty and despair, offering them the same advice that had changed his life. The eyes of those kids would often be filled with disbelief. Could this really be the same Darren who had once slept on park benches? He made sure to keep his business and foundation intertwined. He used his platform to raise awareness for the cause, and in return, the foundation's work helped fuel the growth of his company. It was a symbiotic relationship that allowed him to continue doing what he loved while making an even greater impact. One day, Darren received a message that would forever solidify his place as a beacon of hope. It was from a young man named Malik, a kid who had been in one of the first groups Darren had mentored. Malik had grown up in the same rough neighborhood, and like Darren, he had once believed his future was set in stone. But after hearing Darren speak, Malik had decided to change his path. He had enrolled in college, started a small business, and now, just a few years later, he was offering mentorship to other at-risk youth. Malik's message was simple: I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You gave me the belief that anything was possible. Now, I'm passing that belief on to others. Darren stared at the message, his eyes misting over. He had always wanted to make a difference, but seeing the tangible results of his efforts was more powerful than anything he could have imagined. He realized then that the true power of his journey wasn't in the money or the fame, it was in the lives he had touched, the people he had inspired to believe in themselves. Years later, Darren stood on the stage of a huge conference, addressing an audience of thousands. He had become a household name in the world of entrepreneurship, but what mattered most was that he had never forgotten his roots. He had turned the impossible into possible, not just for himself, but for countless others. His life was no longer defined by his circumstances, it was defined by his choices, his actions, and his unwavering belief in the power of hope. And as he looked out at the crowd, Darren knew one thing for certain: no matter where you come from, no matter how impossible the odds may seem, anyone can change their story. And sometimes, just sometimes, a single decision, a small act of belief, is all it takes to start turning the impossible into possible.